Hello, hello. All right, I think we are live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the stream. All right, cool. I think I have everything ready to go. So Twitch comments are working. Everything else seems to be working fine. Great. Alrighty. So we might just give it a few more minutes so that I can cover what I wanted to mention. But basically, this is the guy that we started working on last week or a couple of weeks ago. This alien creature. I only got to do a few of the details of the face, but the rest is pretty much, plain. But it has a relatively, alright topology. So it's pretty easy to just add those details. Last stream, like a couple of weeks ago, we went ahead and did all these details with the some of the custom brushes that I have, the skin brushes. I might touch on that as well today. But the idea for me today is obviously give you different tools, different workflows, show you different techniques, I guess. And obviously, if you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat. I have it right next to me so I can have a look at. If you have any questions as I go along, or anything else that you want me to tackle. So yeah, the idea for today would be to add some kind of like I don't know exactly how to describe it, but every time that I start designing something or creating a new concept, I always give it a bit of a background story, even if it's just a tiny bit of story. So for this guy, I just thought it could be some kind of like royal, like alien royal or something like that. So maybe some kind of accessory, or even like a fashion type of thing that could fit him within a world where he's like a high society type of thing. And I want to do something in contrast with the general shapes of the alien. So what I mean by that is that if you have a look at most of these, the primary and the secondary forms of this creature or this alien, it's pretty soft, and it's most of the angles are pretty curved, and it's a kind of like a soft read of this character. So I want to do something in contrast with that. So I'm gonna go for like more hard edges or something very, very sharp, so that it creates that kind of contrast, and that could help as well to define where this character lives and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's the idea. Again, if you have any questions about something that I've done already in the previous stream, feel free to ask away. Something that I couldn't answer last stream. But if you're curious about how I set it up, you can just go ahead and watch the last stream. So let me just show you I think it's one of these ones. Right. That's not meant to be there. Yeah, here we go. So this is kind of like the blockout that we did last week. So we started from something like that, and we polished it all the way to what I currently have. So this with the retopology, the polygroups and all of that. So that's essentially what we did last stream. All right. So a couple of things to mention that I think are pretty important is that I'm gonna work in a separate set of tools to build the assets, kind of like building the assets separately, and then I'll come back and add them. But I'm gonna reuse a lot of the base mesh that I already have here to place those assets. So let me just I'm gonna bring in my Epic pen, and I'm gonna do a quick mock-up of the idea that I have, so that you guys have an idea as well of what we are aiming for. Yeah, nothing too crazy. So again, I still don't have a perfect idea. I just have like a rough vision of what to do. So I might want to do some kind of like, kind of like spiky necklace or a collar like this that goes this way, right? So that would be one of the things that I want to do. And I have like some pretty cool techniques to show you. So even though it seems like maybe a bit boring, there's some things that I think you might find useful. Yeah, on top of that, we can go ahead and do, I don't know if we're gonna have time, but you know, to do something like just like a piece of clothing or something, like a gown or something like that. And then the most like out there kind of like design would be, I want to, like I said, this is kind of like a royal, like, or like a prince or something like that. And the idea is to add like maybe like a jewelry or something like this that reflects these, like his status in the society or something. So, but instead of like the classic, you know, crown like that, what I'm planning to do is something similar, but you know, this time it's just kind of like something like this. Like the crown is like face forward or something. Anyway, we'll see how we go. This is just like an idea I had. I know it might not pan out. You know, we can maybe we can do something with some kind of like ornaments type of thing. Anyway, we'll see how we go. We probably start with the necklace because I have like a more accurate workflow that I can show you. The other ones are gonna be pretty experimental, I guess. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is go to, let's check the topology. Yeah, we cannot use that one. I'm gonna go to the high subdivision level and duplicate that. Go into solo mode, so we have an exact duplicate, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete lower. So now we don't have the subdivision levels, but we still have, you know, a pretty decent flow topology, but we're not gonna use that anyway, so it doesn't matter. One more thing. So I've been using this this specific material for sculpting, just because I think it shows the volumes quite well and even the details a little bit. So this is some of the, yes, this is one of the resources that I shared in my 3D snippets this month for a creature that we're working on. Hey, Bad, Alex, welcome. Shane, oh, probably haven't updated the stream. Let me see. All good. Alrighty. So the first thing, or the first step of this workflow is that we need to build kind of like the placement of these assets. So I'm gonna use what I already have. That's the reason I duplicated the topology or the mesh to create kind of like the base. So that's the first the first step, or the first part of the workflow, is to build the base of what you want to use to grow the assets or grow the other pieces. So what I'll do is I'm gonna enable polyframe and turn on the line, and I'm also gonna give it a single polygroup with Control H. And what I was saying about the this specific material is that, yeah, it's something that I've been using lately just because it shows like the volumes. I quite like to sculpt with this, but you know, could be anything. So you'll see the difference. There's a lot of more contrast on this one, but it doesn't really work if you want to use polypaint, or if you want to enable, you know, polyframe and you have a lot of lines. So, all right. So with the polyframe on, line off, I'm gonna put perspective off as well. I'm gonna use the slice curve. You could use the mask lasso as well, or you could use the knife brush. There are multiple ways of doing the same thing. In fact, let's just go ahead and use the mask lasso. It's probably a lot easier. And I'm gonna define where I want to place the necklace thing. So it's gonna be something like that. And the reason I deleted the lowest subdivision level, first is because we don't need it. We don't need the subdivision level. We're gonna delete what we don't need. But I kept the highest subdivision level so that when I do this mask, there's enough geometry to obviously describe the mask. Otherwise, if I would have done it in, in this one with maybe at this subdivision level, I can still do the mask, but you see the edge is not as crisp and clean. So that is the only reason I went ahead and did that. So I think I'm gonna do something like this as the base. And obviously I'm gonna invert that mask, right? And just kind of like fix it up a little bit. So it's just a quick cleanup. I also have this custom mask. I don't know if this one is available in the ZBrush guides, but it should be there. I'll show you how you can make your own. But basically, oh, you know where this one is? I remember. So let me just show you. First, let me just show you what this does. It's just a mask that it has a very sharp, so I don't have to press hard or anything, but it gives me like this super sharp mask. And this is kind of like my go-to when I'm doing these type of things, just because it gives me a very, very clean edge. It's even cleaner than using the mask lasso. So for this particular process, this is kind of like what I use 100% of the time. I'll show you how you can make your own. It's really easy. All right. It's kind of like a beep or something. Anyway, I think this is gonna look better once we add the details. So if you want to grab these masking brush, let's see. Okay, so if you go to the 3D Concept Artist website, so this is where I have all my online courses and all of that. If you go to the resources, so this one that I'm talking about is not part of the ZBrush guides, just because it's part of a different kit. So if you go to this website and you scroll down to assets, you can go to the Ultimate ZBrush Guide Starter Kit for beginners. And this is kind of like a little pack, like a little ZBrush pack that I built for anyone that is like, totally new to ZBrush, and it's free to download. And you can just grab that starter kit and it should just, give you a head start. And that brush comes with that pack. So you see this one, this is the one that I'm talking about. This, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that. That one is the one that I'm using. So it comes with like materials for sculpting, rendering. It comes with like a cool kind of like, like a cheat sheet that you can use. So yeah, just put your name and email, click subscribe, and then you can download it. And this is a specific kit that comes with brushes, materials, a guide, and some UIs as well, or a UI. This UI, it's a starter kit that is free. But then if you want to just take it to the next level and you want to learn ZBrush, it is part as well of the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, which you can just read more about it later in here. But I just thought this one is free, so you can just download it now. And that brush that I'm using is here, and it comes with a bunch of other very basic, very simple brushes that I just tweaked it slightly, so that is for a new user is a lot easier to use than the standard ones. So yeah, that's about it. So yeah, you can go. I'll put a link here so you can just click and get it if you want it. They're pretty basic, like I said, but that specific one that I'm using here, the masking one, is really good. Hey, say everyone. Thank you. Glad you like the visuals. All right. So what I'm gonna do now is you can either invert the mask or just keep it like that. It doesn't matter, because ultimately what I'm gonna do is group or Control W, and that basically assigns a new polygroup to anything that's masked. So I can clear the mask now, and that's it. Like that's the only thing that you need to do. And now I can just select rectangular piece, hold Control and Shift to select just this polygroup, and I'm gonna delete hidden. Right? This is something that you cannot do if you have multiple subdivision levels. So now I deleted that, and that's the reason also I deleted these subdivision levels. But yeah, so this is basically it, right? That's step one of the process. It's just to build the pieces that you need so that you can then apply whatever you want on top. Now, because I'm going to use a technique using nano mesh probably, or insert meshes, I want something that has, that's a little bit better in terms of the topology. But because we already have something, relatively decent, all I have to do is leave the symmetry enable. We can remove keep groups. So all of these tools, by the way, they are just here. So all of the stuff that I have in my UI here, they are part of the ZBrush. So let's just do it from here. I'm gonna turn off adaptive mode. This adaptive mode, or the adaptive density, in case you don't know or you're not familiar with this process, is really good to leave it on if you have something with a lot of like creases or cavities that are pretty pronounced. So for instance, if I were to retopologize this mesh and I want to consider these details as part of the topology, I would leave adaptive on. And that way, when ZBrush is retopologizing or doing the Z-remesher, it basically adapts the density of the polygons. So it will put more polygons around those squiggly lines just to be able to describe those. But in this case, because all I want is just a pretty clean topology from a relatively flat set of polygons or surface, I don't have to have that on, and it just makes it a lot faster. And yeah, I can get to half the amount really quickly. I'm gonna use half, but you could also just turn this off and set a polygon count. It's kind of like the same thing. I like to use half because I can do it gradually. So I can click once, wait until ZBrush does, process this. And let's turn on the line. And the only reason I like to do that is because I can see if there is like, issues, or like see these areas here, right? And I can kind of like give the ZBrush some help to remesh it. So I can just hold the shift key to access the smooth brushes and just smooth these areas a little bit, right? And maybe another one here, you'll see it's kind of like weird. Even this one here is really weird. So one thing I'll do as well is use the polish by groups, and that cleans up that line, right? So let me just undo that so you can see. And let's click on ZBrush again. I'm gonna polish by groups again, remesh. You probably just get away with, the same process, the same thing that I'm doing, get away with just using, a target polygon count. But like I said, kind of like the gradual process of doing this and using the smooth brush to, kind of like give the ZBrush a helping hand. All right, so this one is not the greatest of topologies. So what I can do now is click on same. So I wanna have the same amount of polygons, but I can remesh multiple times. So it's kind of like cycling through different options. So this is more what I was expecting, or what I wanted to achieve. Is kind of like this type of clean set of loops. This one right here is not is not the best, but instead of, let's try it one more time. A couple more times. Oh, it's nearly there. No. So this one is almost what I want, but I would like to have another complete loop in here. So a very simple thing that you can do as well is to clean the ZBrush result with a CModeler. So I'm going to switch to my CModeler here. And what I'll do is I'm going to tag these two polygons, right click, delete, polygroup all, or it doesn't matter in this time since I just tagged them. So I just deleted that. And then I'm going to right click on the edge. I'm going to click on insert. Yep. Click on insert just to add another polygon. Maybe we can right click and slide edge loop complete, just to slide this one up a little bit. And oh, we need another one actually, sorry. So let's do that. Right click, insert. There we go. So now we have 4 edge loops, the same as here, and all I have to do left is bridge the edges. So click and click, 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 click. That's it. So now let's go back to sculpting mode. Let's smooth this a little bit. Control W just to assign a single polygroup. Oops. And that is a much cleaner version. So it's, it's taking advantage of the for instance, in this specific process that I just showed you, I go into a lot more depth in the Extra Mile course, which is the big course that I have online, which actually, if you're interested, is going to open at the end of this month for enrollment. So I just cover like this nice balance between retopologizing or remeshing things with automated tools and manual tools. So that is kind of like just an example of that process where you can rely on the ZBrush to do most of the things, as in you can automate the process and get to a pretty decent point. And then if you find something that you don't like, or if you want a very specific, flow of topology, you can manually edit those. But as you can see, it doesn't take that long. And so you can mix those two techniques together, and it's pretty handy. All right, so we pretty much have what we need. I'm just cleaning up the shape a little bit with the move brush. All right, so I'm just gonna leave this one as it is, and I'm gonna do another one. So I'm gonna duplicate this, hide that one, but this one I'm gonna remove all these edge loops with this CModeler. Right click, delete edge loop complete. So I'm gonna delete all of those. So it is basically just a set of polygons. You'll see why. This is just for the for the nanomesh, and then we'll keep the other one just in case. Alrighty. So if we get out of solo mode, this one is already pre-embedded. So I'm gonna inflate that. All of these tools that I'm using, or most of these tools from the deformation polish section in my custom UI, they are part of the deformation palette. So I'm just gonna inflate this a little bit like this. I think that's fine. Let's push this one. Alrighty, cool. So we are ready to move on now. All of these, I know it took a little bit of time just because I'm kind of like walking you through the process, but this is something that it takes no time to do once you get used to it. Having a base mesh, masking it, polygroup it, delete hidden or delete whatever you don't need, do a quick ZBrush, and then you have a base to start with. The next step, so this is the whole thing that I've been showing you is step 1. Like I said, it will be faster once you practice it. Step 2 would be to build the assets that you want to add to this piece. So this is where I mentioned at the beginning that I'm going to be using a different tool. So I think I'm just going to use a sphere and then maybe walk you through the process of just dynameshing something cool. By the way, guys, something maybe I should just let you know that right now, something that I had prepared for the beginning, but I forgot. Sorry. Cool. So today is my number 101 episode of ZBrush Live, which is awesome. Is this link from Pixelogic ZBrush? Is it a scam? What? I don't see any link. Is the only link that I see is the one that I sent, which is the 3D Concept Artist website, which is for a brush that I was using. I don't know if that's what you're asking, Rice Art. But yeah, so today is like the episode number 101. So I just thought for like as a celebration, I just set my entire store for the brushes with 25% discount. So this this thing here that you can see here at the bottom right, that's the code that you can use if you want to get 25% discount in the store for all the brushes and all this stuff. And I'll put a link. I'll show you what this is. So you can just go here, and if you're interested in any of the brushes or any of the packs, you can grab it. Thanks, Eddie. So yeah, just go in here, and everything, whatever you choose, the whole store is 25% off. The catch though is that this code and this discount is only available during the stream. As soon as we finish today, it goes back to normal. So it's kind of like obviously because it is about the ZBrush live stream, and a lot of you guys are you come back and every time that I do a live stream, so I just wanted to give something back as well. But it's just kind of like a little present just for the ZBrush live viewers and supporters. So yeah, so that code that you see on that side, the ZBrush Live 101 is a code that you can put. So you just click anywhere that you want. So if you want the skin brushes, which are the ones that we use last stream, you go here and buy now, and then you put that code. So the code goes here. That's it. Alrighty. So I'll leave the code there for a little bit, and if someone else asks, you can point them to that place. That's it. All right. So I'm gonna select the mesh that I grabbed, which is just a sphere. I'm gonna scale it down and up the y-axis. So this is gonna be kind of like one of the spiky things that I'm gonna use as like a jewelry thing. I don't know. Yeah, something like this. I'm gonna unify it just to make sure. And also, let's see, if I enable, I guess you can do Dynamesh or not, doesn't matter. I think the amount of polygons that I have right now are pretty decent to describe what I want to do anyway. But I'm just thinking that I might just change this. Sorry guys. So I'm gonna turn it into a Q-cube. So in case you didn't know, any mesh that you have selected, you can just go to the initialize tab. Those are the buttons that I have here, and just click on Q-cube, Q-sphere, or Q-grid, and it just creates a pretty simple primitive, right? So that's what I did. I just took that mesh and converted it into a cube. But the cube, or this cube, I'm just gonna scale it like so. And I'm gonna rotate it 45 degrees, so holding shift, just so that it snaps to those integer numbers. All right, something like that. And then from this angle, I'm gonna bring in the gizmo, and the gizmo obviously is rotated because that's what we did. We rotated it 45 degrees. So this time what I'll do is I'm gonna click on this unlocking icon, or you can press Alt. You'll see if I press Alt, it automatically unlocks, and that is basically so that you can move the pivot or reset the rotation, that sort of thing. So by doing that, it's kind of like unlocking the gizmo from the mesh, so now the gizmo can move freely. And the same thing, I can just click on that and it will reset the rotation and I can click it back on. So yeah, all I did was just reset the rotation, because now I can bring in something like the flatten deformer. So from the gear icon here, flatten, and then I use this to just push this up. So that's roughly what I wanted to do, kind of like this triangular profile in a way. Click OK or accept. So now we have this Toblerone type of thing. Then what I'll do is go for a taper deformer. I use the taper deformer a whole bunch of, for a lot of different things. But one thing that I just remember, actually, we won't use it right now, just because the taper deformer is just gonna taper, the tip of this tooth, or the both ends of this thing. But because it was a very simple mesh, you'll see I don't have enough topology. So what I'll do is I'm gonna do some quick poly loops. Let me just show you. So I'm gonna do a few quick poly loops, but instead of using the C modeler, just to show you something else, I'll do half and half. So the C modeler, you can right click, and this one is pretty easy. You can go to insert, and you can go multi-edge loop. Click on that, click on the edge, and then just do this, right? And then the longer that you kind of like pull, the more poly loops that you're gonna add. So yeah, this is just to have like a control way of doing it. So I'm just gonna do that, right? Now on the other side, another way that you can do it, it's less control, but it still works, is with this slice curve. So if you press hold, or if you hold Control and Shift and click on the brush thumbnail, you can click on slice curve, right? And then basically go through it like this, right? Obviously it's not the cleanest one, but if you want something that is not as straight like I just did there, you can also, do this this technique. So there's multiple ways of doing it. So the slice curve basically just produces that. So I'm just gonna mirror and weld. Hang on. Rotating 90 degrees, so I can mirror and weld, so that we have like, nicer topology. The mirror and weld would be under the modified topology. So tool palette, geometry, modified topology, mirror and weld. That's the button that I have here in my UI. Yeah, so, and the mirror and weld, what it does is just takes, one half of your mesh, mirrors it and welds it together. Could you use slice curve to make a bunch of poly loops to get clean topology? Yes, that's definitely an option. I would use it if I want a specific set of loops, but I will still do a retopology. So in other words, let me just show you. Let's say that I have these, hang on. Yeah, I have this sphere, right? And I want a specific ways of controlling that topology. So with this slice curve, I can do, this. And every time that I do that, I generate a different topology. So I can do, or a different poly group, not a different topology, right? And I can do all of that, and maybe something like this, right? So every time that I run that, it will create different poly loops, or poly groups, sorry. And then it's just about, you deciding which ones you want to keep for that retopology, which is what I'm assuming you want to get like a clean topology. So in that case, you can select the select rectangular piece, and yeah, basically go through the process of adding, maybe I want these two pieces to be part of one thing, like so, and then I want to keep these ones separately. And then, because obviously this is just a Dynamesh, I can just go ahead and, in the ZBrush, I'm gonna keep groups, click on half, and turn off adaptive, and I'm gonna remesh this whole thing. And yeah, so as you can see, those loops or those polygroups that I created with the slice curve are maintained. So this is a different color. I'm just giving a different color so you can see. Oh, come on. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So, and you can keep doing that. You can keep just remeshing it until you have something cleaner. Like I said, you can just polish that, remesh again, manually fix it a little bit. But that's essentially what we did for the entire alien last stream, just to get a set of nicer, clean edges. So all of those polygroups, I think we use the slice curve anyway, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, going back to what we were doing before, I'm gonna bring in the gizmo now, gear icon, taper deformer. Now that we have enough topology to be able to taper this, I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna taper that, make it like really, really sharp. And this part maybe not as much. And I'm gonna use this white cone, and the white cone is gonna change the profile of that kind of like tapering. So if I push it all the way up, this is gonna be pretty narrow. You can almost see it, like if you hang on. Why is it so large? Right. So if you have like a 2-axis curve type of thing, and then you describe this as your profile. Right now, this is kind of like, I would say something like this, right? And if I push it like that, it's gonna be inverted. It's gonna be like that, right? And if I leave it right in the middle, or 0.5 roughly, it's a pretty gradual deformation. Anyway, that was just kind of like to explain how this taper works, but you get the idea. So you can just play around with this. So I'm gonna do something like this, but the really cool thing about this is that you can define like in which axis the tapering is happening. So right now it is happening in all of the axes, so that's why you have all of these the red, green, and blue cone. So if I go from the side, you'll see this thing is tapering this this area like that. And there are a couple of ways of doing it, but you can just tell ZBrush, okay, I don't want to have the tapering happening in the Z-axis, so I'm going to change the opacity. So if I do that, from this angle, it looks like the same, but if I go up, it just looks fine from here. So that's kind of what I want to do as well. Maybe a tiny bit. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna show you something else. So let's just leave it as it is, right? Click OK. And now, so if I want to keep this kind of like flatter, or having these tips pointing down a little bit more, I'm going to use the bend arc deformer. And from this angle, I can use the green to just do this, right? So let's do something like that. And we can just play as well with the profile here, or the radius. Accept. So that's pretty good. And if you want a totally flat surface, in this case, I don't really care. In fact, I want to probably curve it a little bit more, but I want to show you that if you want a perfectly flat surface, you can, from this angle again, use the flatter or the flatten deformer, and that will just push the geometry. It doesn't cut it, it just pushes the geometry. So that's going to be like, perfectly flat, right? But like I said, I want to give it a bit of a curvature. Something like that. All right, so we have our spike. Just tweak it a tiny bit more. And it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna inflate a little bit as well. And the next thing I want to do is assign some polygrouping so that I can polish it like faster, like kind of like automate the process a bit more. So let's do that. So holding Control and Shift, I'm going to select the select lasso, Control and Shift. So Control W there, invert, Control W. So I basically assign these two polygroups, and then for the one at the bottom, let's do the same. Again. Should have done it before because I curved it. All right, that's okay. We'll use the select lasso. And then we just remove the rest. Could have, in all honesty, you could have done that before even doing any deformer, just right after you do the edge loops, but doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Like I said, there's tons and tons of different ways of doing the same thing. All right, so this is going to be another polygroup. And yeah, so now we have a clean topology with polygroups. Maybe this one. All right, now we have what we need. And the reason I do this is because once let me just show you. So I'll do that after, but just so that you understand what I'm doing this ahead of time. So if I were to just subdivide this a few times, let's say 5 times, right? This is obviously now a smoother version of it, like really nice and clean, really smooth, but I want to maintain those sharp edges. So I can either polygroup by, sorry, let me undo that again. Before I subdivide it, I can polygroup by, or crease by polygroup, which is here for you guys. Under the crease section, geometry crease, you can use crease PG or crease polygroup, and that basically creates that dotted line that you see there, and that indicates that it's like a sharp edge. So yeah, basically when you subdivide, ZBrush is going to maintain those edges. So that's the reason why you want to have polygroups. Alternatively, which is what I'm going to do, you can, if you don't have those creasing edges, you can just subdivide again, right? But you can polish by features. So by polishing by features, we'll also look at the difference between polygroups. So you can polish by features, maybe toggle this dot off or on. Yeah, I think when it's empty, it's on. Can't remember. And that just makes it a lot stronger, that the algorithm. And you'll see, like, the more that I do it, the sharper it gets. So I'm just polishing by features, and the polishing just like cleans up the topology, but because I'm keeping, you know, I have the difference in polygroups, it just makes it like really sharp. So that's what I'm gonna do, and I can apply this to you know, multiple of these pieces at once instead of just one. Alrighty, so let's take this guy, which is gonna be the thing, one of the things that we're gonna use for that color necklace thing. And from this angle, I'm gonna click on the brush icon. I'm gonna click on create insert meshes, click on new. So now we have an insert mesh. So if I click and drag, that's what I get. Pretty good. And now that I have this IMM brush, I'm gonna click the brush again, and I'm gonna click on nano mesh brush. So you have to have an IMM brush before you create a nano mesh, right? Cool. So now we have this nano mesh. We can go ahead now and go back to our mesh that we were working on. Let's get into solo mode. And if I go ahead and click and drag, well, I have symmetry. I'm going to turn it off. If I go ahead and click and drag anywhere, I can drag this piece. And this is basically what nano mesh is. So right now it looks like it's just another IMM brush, where you can click and drag and add it. But the difference is that, as you can see, when I click and drag this piece, this is not geometry. It's just, or it's not like real geometry right now. It's just an instance of that brush, basically, that is placed on this polygon. So if I go to Nanomesh in here, the Nanomesh palette, now this is available, right? So I can show the instance, which is that spiky thing, or not, or show the placement, which is, you know, that polygon where I placed it. So that's really, really handy, right? Because I can modify, I can tweak this base mesh, you know, as much as I want to, without the need of applying this. And basically I can modify the base or that green polygroup as much as I want to in terms of the shape, and all of these pieces will be in will be kept the same. So I won't alter. I'll show you what I mean. But anyway, so let's go back a bit and let's go ahead and right click on the mesh. And with the nanomesh, you see any nanomesh is ultimately a C modeler brush. So if I right click on the face, the insert nanomesh brush is selected as the polygon action, or what the C modeler is going to do. But I'm going to change the target from a single polygon, which is what I did before, to polygroup all. And because we have, you know, a single polygroup is going to apply to anything or everything. So I'm going to click and drag, right? And that's pretty much it. Now it's not looking great. I'll show you why. Because this thing is just aligning that piece randomly on the faces. But in the Nanomesh palette, if you go to alignment, you see there's no alignment at the moment, but you can align to, you know, normal, linear edge, point, whatever, right? In this case, you can try different things. You can try normal, which is kind of works. It's actually not too bad, the shape, but I want to align them all in the same way along the long edge. So if I press long edge, you see those pieces are aligned, you know, are kind of like parallel to the long edges of the polygon, and vice versa. If I click on short edge, they're just gonna be like that, right? So kind of like not parallel, but perpendicular to those long polygons that I created. Yeah, so that's it, right? And now obviously what we can do is tweak the placement and the size and all of that. So we can go ahead and change the size, right? We can change the rotation. So let's set this to maybe 90, right? And also if you want these pieces to kind of like go outside of the color of the necklace thing, because right now they're kind of like in the middle. If I go closer, they're kind of like in the middle. And like I said, it doesn't really matter because I'm probably gonna hide the base anyway. So I can, you know, I can click on show placement and it will look like it's just this piece. But if you want to do it for whatever reason, you can push or offset the Z-axis. So I'm gonna push that just to offset them a tiny bit. Now, obviously, I want to be able to vary this a little bit more, right? So one thing we can do is either change the fit or fill. So if I click on fit, each piece is gonna be fitted to these polygons, which is not what I really want. I don't want these to be that spiky. But you know, again, there's multiple ways of doing the same thing. If I want to keep this way, right? If I want to make sure that the pieces that I added are fit to the polygon or are fitted to the polygon, I can compensate like the width and all of that with this. So height, length, width. So I can just do that, which is probably not too bad actually. I was gonna try something else, but this is just a simple way to go about it, I suppose. Hang on, let me just see the chat. Sorry, being totally caught up on this. When are we expecting the new fall brushes set? Pretty soon, actually. In case you guys don't know what that question is about, I'm working on some on a new set of brushes, like a new pack of brushes, which is for dealing with falls or adding wrinkles and falls. So it's mostly for clothing objects, but it's really cool. I'm pretty excited about this pack, and I've kind of like been developing this pack of brushes alongside a new project that I'm doing for the 3D snippets. So I'm still testing. So I'm already in the beta testing. I can give you a sneak preview of the brushes. There's quite a few brushes as well. So these are the ones that I have so far. Not all of them. So, but there's some pretty cool brushes here for different purposes. You know, from like wrinkles to compression faults, seam tension points. Yeah, there's a bunch of things, tileable textures, things like that. So it's not ready yet. I'm still testing those things and make sure that they're useful. But yeah, this is gonna be, you know, pretty cool. And those brushes I'm also developing them kind of like at the same time that I'm working on this thing. Let me show you. It's something that I'm working this month in the 3D snippets. So this guy here. So 3D snippets, again, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like another project that I have where it's a project that pushes me to produce my you know, personal projects every month. So you can subscribe, and I'll just walk you through everything that I do. It's kind of like a fly on the wall type of thing. You're looking at what I'm doing. So this guy right here, this creature shaman, it has lots of different like clothing objects and things like that. So I'm using this as a testing ground so that I can, you know, produce the wrinkles and all of that. So it's I'm pretty excited about this pack. I'll let you know more about it once they're ready. We just slice this curve. Yeah. This wouldn't work if there was a interior loop in the mesh. Comics Legend. Sorry, I'm not sure. Maybe this is related to something else, or something that I explained before. This wouldn't work if there was an interior loop in the mesh. Interior loop. So if you're talking about this, you mean like a loop that goes across, you know, the entire base? I don't know if that's what you mean. I thought you were working on a new hairbrush set. No, there's two brush sets that you can already get. Sorry, let me just show you this quickly. So this one is free, and this for sculpting brushes for hair. So it's a simple pack with 12 brushes that allows you to sculpt hair directly on the mesh, and those ones are pretty cool. But there's this one, the fiber mesh grooming kit, that allows you to. They're just custom brushes to deal with fiber mesh, and it's a lot easier, at least for me. You know, keep in mind that everything that I put in here are just things that I found really useful and that I use on a daily basis. So I just put it out there in case you might find it useful as well. So no, the new ones are just for clothing. Love the pack. Cool, awesome, thank you. I'm in the nanomesh. Yes. All right. So Comics Legend. Yep, you have a good point. If I were to just add, you know, a new edge loop here, so let's do that. Right, and I go back with the nanomesh, you know, that is set to polygroup all. It's just gonna add one for each one of these polygons. So I'm gonna end up with 2. Right, which is, it might be what you want. So yeah, it doesn't work with that's the reason I deleted them basically. But also keep in mind that the whole point of this, the reason I'm doing it this way is because that base, I'm not gonna use that. I'm gonna get rid of that base altogether, or I can duplicate it and do like a better topology for it. But the only reason I wanna keep it is so that I can build the assets with the nanomesh, and that's it. Then I'm gonna get rid of it. So yeah, let's go back to what we were doing. So I have this piece, and I think I'm gonna do -90. I want the the more spiky points to probably be that way. Yeah, I think there some of them. Some of them are, half of them are pointing inwards and half of them are pointing backwards. So it doesn't matter, but I mean, it doesn't matter in my case, but if you want to, there's a manual way of fixing this. So if you don't find any alignment that works for you, you can just right click on a face or an edge, I think it's on a, yeah, I think it's an edge. So if you right click on an edge, let's do it with the simulator. Right click on an edge, there's this spin edge. So if you click on spin edge, you can just spin it. No, so it's not that one, sorry. I don't use that often, but I'm sure it's, yeah. Spin the polygon, so not the edge, sorry. The edge will spin the actual edge. But if you click on the polygon, you can spin that polygon, and it should, in theory, do it. No, hang on. What am I doing? So it's a spin edges. Sorry, scratch all of that. So if you select if you right click or press spacebar on a polygon, you click on spin edges. That's the one. Nope. All right, scratch all of that. There's a way to why is it not working? Oh, you know what? Yep. All right. Now I remember. So in order to use that that tool from the simulator, you have to actually have no alignment so that you can manually do that. So that's, now it's working. So yeah, so you can just rotate this around, you know, to get the alignment, the exact alignment that you want. So if I want all of the kind of like pointy bits of this to be outwards, I just go through that process. I mean, it's a manual process, but only works when there is no alignment, obviously. I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, I don't have that many. All right, let me just do all of these ones. Again, this is not something that I use often. It's good to know that it's there. So if you, for some reason, really need to make sure that all of these are pointing the right direction, what you do is just set it to no alignment and then manually align those polygons. That's it. All right, I'm happy with this. Now let's go ahead and maybe, you know what, let's, you can add V tiles just to have more of these meshes per each one of the polygons. So now that I set the V tile or the vertical tile to 2, there is going to be 2 of these instances of the brush per each one of the polygons. Just increase that so that we can close the gaps a little bit more. And one thing that I want to do, I don't want this to be perfectly aligned or like perfectly, you know, have them all the same size. So I'm going to vary that, randomize it a little bit. So I'm going to take the height, I think it is the height, nope, the length, right? And I'm going to randomize it. So I'm going to set the length to 0.8, and this LVAR or length variation is essentially that. So I'm just going to do this, and that you'll see it varies this size. Just going to exaggerate it more. That's pretty cool. The other thing that I want to do is yeah, so rotating it. So I want to rotate the rotation, the 90-degree rotation is just to place those, right? So that's just to rotate around, minus 90 again. The Y rotation is just kind of like rotating on its own axis in this case. and the X rotation is the one that, you know, turns this whole thing around. So what I'll do is I'm gonna set this to very low values, like 0.1. 0.1, I think is 0.1. What? Oh, there's no decimals. I don't know if 1 is good enough, but it just allows me to add a bit of variation. Yeah, so 2, 2, and leave the 90, the Z rotation at 90, and then just add a bit of variation to those. So it's not much, but it just helps with the illusion, so it's not like completely, you know, manufactured. It's more random. And if I turn off the show placement, now we have this nice collar or necklace thing. Yeah, so let's go get out of solo, and you know, we have something that looks pretty cool. Now, another thing that we can do is maybe duplicate this one more time. And if we duplicate, it will come with the nanomesh. So I have a duplicate of that nanomesh. Let's go to move brush and symmetry. So right now what I have are two pieces that are kind of like sitting on the same spot. So they're overlapping. But I can just move one of those and I won't affect the kind of like these spiky bits. And this is the whole point of doing this asset or doing this process this way using nanomesh, because let's go to the nanomesh, show instance, show placement, get into solo mode. So right now, if those spikes were actually actual geometry that I'm manipulating, if I go ahead and move the brush or move the mesh with the move brush, I would actually deform these pieces quite a bit, right? But because all I'm doing really is just manipulating the base, it's a lot easier to just adjust the placement of this, and I can maintain that nice straight line. The pieces are going to stretch if the polygon stretches, like you can see here, but that is just because I have this set to fit. If you set it to prop or to proportional, that's not going to happen. So basically, you can move things as much as you want, but the instance is going to be proportionally fitted to the polygon. So if you don't want them to stretch, you can use proportional, but then in that case, there's other things that you have to tweak. Anyway, so let's go to show placement, go back to solo mode, and I'm going to use the symmetry in this case just to push the geometry out a bit. And I'm just going to intersect some of these. Doesn't matter really. Maybe we can remove the V tile as well, just to make larger pieces. Maybe slightly shorter ones as well. So we get a nice set of, a nice pattern basically. But remember, all we're doing really is just manipulating the base mesh, or that, those polygons underneath. So it's in a way, it's kind of like the, I would call it the particle system in ZBrush. Because that's what it is, just an instance. You can make little particles and then just add them to the mesh. All right, I think that looks cool. Let's go to the high subdivision level. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. That's kind of like the idea that I had at the beginning. I'm gonna move faster now, moving forward, just because now you know kind of like this technique. The duplicate that we had from before, this was the original one. We can use this to maybe add kind of like some kind of string or something that is attached to, or like that is holding those things. So I'm gonna duplicate it just in case and put one in the originals. So what I'll do is go to the C modeler, right click, bevel, or oh, let's just do the insert single edge loop. All right, so what I want to do now is figure out where I want to place kind of like a string around, right? So probably here, a few actually, and then towards the center as well. And maybe a couple more here. That's it. You know, this one again is just a placement. It's not a geometry that I want to use at all. So now let's go ahead and use the select lasso. Hold Control and Shift. By the way, the select lasso, in case you didn't know, is the only kind of like selection brush that allows you to select edge loops. So I can hold Control and Shift and do that. So I'm just gonna select some of those edge loops, kind of like hide those. Like that. Control W to assign a different polygroup. And that's about it. Maybe I think there are too many. I wanna simplify it even more. All right, so I'm just gonna have two polygroups. So the lighter green, or the difference between the lighter green and the darker green, is where I'm gonna place the curves. So from the stroke palette, I'm gonna go to curve functions, and then in the frame mesh you have different options. So you have border, you have polygroup, crease, edge, right? I guess you could just use the crease edge. I don't usually use this option much, but basically if I toggle this off and leave the border on and click on frame mesh, ZBrush is going to place a curve in the border of the polygroup. So that's something you can do. But because I did these polygroups, sorry, I'm going to use polygroup, click on frame mesh, and that's what I end up with. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you know what? I need some more gap. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to use the slide. And I'm going to slide these ones up. Yeah, so keep in mind that the difference is where, you know, the strokes are gonna be. So frame that. That's a lot better. And let's go ahead and select the tube brush. In this case, you can use any curve brush really. I'm gonna use the tube brush with a draw size, small draw size, and click once, and that gives me this nice set of tubes. I'll make them smaller. Yeah, let's wait until ZBrush saves this. I'm gonna make sure undo this off. Alrighty. So yeah, I think I'm happy with this. Let's go ahead and click, or just go to the stroke and delete the curve. And this is automatically masked, so I can split on mask points. So now I can, you know, hide this or just move it to the originals. And I have these tools here. I'm gonna also auto group those. Right, so I have the nice set of polygons, and get out of solo mode, and I'm just gonna push them up actually, or inflate them. The problem if I inflate those, let's just inflate balloon. Or just use the move brush actually. I just wanna keep the kind of like the thickness. I think I quite like it. So I'm just gonna use symmetry and the move brush just to pull this closer to the body, or outside of the body really. And yeah, that's it. So now I'm just gonna use the move brush to pull the geometry out a bit, just to compensate for what I push. And that's about it, really. That's what I wanted to create for this guy as one of the assets. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Hopefully those processes are of help. So what I'll do now is kind of like a tunic or something. But for that, I want to also consider kind of like the volume of the arms, even if I'm gonna, hide them. So I'm just gonna append a cylinder. This is gonna be an arm, or like, well, this is gonna be an arm, but then I'm gonna mirror it to be two arms. And it doesn't have to be anything like super, perfect, as long as it is, as long as the volume is in there. And the only reason I'm doing this is just purely as a way to have the, the simulation working a bit better. So there's not much to say about this process, really. It's just Dynamesh and just pulling and pushing things. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be enough to, it's going to be enough for ZBrush to know that there's a volume there that kind of like resembles an arm. All right, mirror and weld, done. Those are the arms. Yeah, you can, they're not, you can ignore them. They're not gonna be visible at all. It's just, like I said, to have the volume. And the next step would be to generate that kind of like garment or something, just like a tunic. So there's multiple ways of, again, to go about it. Just thinking what I can show you that's useful for you and interesting. Yeah, let's go down the simplest route. So I'm gonna use a it could be a circle 3D, make polymesh, divide it a few times, a little lower. So this is just a circle, a single plane circle, and I'm gonna use this to build that garment that I mentioned. And yeah, it's gonna be very similar to what we did before, just slightly different. So I'm gonna divide it a few more times so that we have more polygroups, or more polygons, sorry. Symmetry, I'm gonna use the mask lasso, or let's use the masking tool that I showed you before. All right. I don't know if you already have an idea what I'm doing, but it's basically following the same principle as what I did before. Creating a base mesh to use it, then masking, select what I need, delete what I don't need. I'm gonna do polish by groups. Again, I'm gonna do this a lot faster just because I already showed you the process. Symmetry on. This time I'm gonna use the ZBrush to do a target polygon count of 3000. Remesh that. Toggle this on. I'm gonna polish by groups again, or polish by features. Let's do another zero measure by half. There we go. Okay, so now we have what we need. Let's go ahead and copy that. Go to our creature, paste that. And yeah, so this is gonna be the garment thing. Oh, whoops. All right, and I'm just gonna adjust it a little bit because it's a little bit too big. And we are ready to simulate. Yeah, should be good. All right, so let's go ahead and use the simulation tools in ZBrush, which are pretty cool. By the way, I don't know if there's any questions so far about what I've been showing you guys. Let me know. Love the alien pack. No worries, man. Glad you like it. Yep. Cool. Yeah, so if there's any question, guys, put it in the chat. Happy to answer them as I go. Let's go to dynamics, and let's talk about dynamics in ZBrush. They're super easy and they're pretty cool. They're really easy to use, and then you can get pretty decent results with it. It's like with everything, you know, like what I showed you before with the zero measure. Zero measure is a fantastic tool that allows you to, you know, get like nice topologies straight away. But with any automated tool or any like simulation, which is what I'm going to show you, you know, there might be things that you need to tweak. So it's the same for doing, let's say, clothing in Marvelous Designer. So I use Marvelous Designer to simulate the clothing most of my time when I'm doing like something that's, you know, more complex garment. I use it to generate the base, but I always bring it back into ZBrush to clean it up and add more details. And that's what I'm using the brushes really to, you know, fine tune and make sure that it's nice and crisp. So it's the same thing. If you were to simulate here, you can simulate, but it doesn't mean that it's, you know, that it's gonna give you like a perfect mesh or a perfect piece of cloth. So you have to, you know, tweak it a bit. All right. So what I'll do is maybe just pull these things closer to each other, because the gravity is gonna pull them apart anyway. Alrighty. So another thing that I want to do before I move forward with this is a quick UV. So that, yeah, we have UVs. And I'm also going to divide this one more time, or a couple more times. Actually, 4 times. So right now, I just subdivided these. So we have a lot more geometry. So we have a total of 79,000 points, right? And this is important. This is an important point because the amount of points that you have here, they have to be lower than the max simulation points, right? In the simulation tab or the simulation menu here, right? You can increase this, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think 250 is a pretty decent default value. So anything that, if you go ahead and subdivide it one more time, I already have 300,000. So that is just not going to work. So it's not going to simulate anything. So I'm going to keep it to 79 or 80,000, which is still pretty decent. And then we can deal with this. Before I go over some of these settings in here, what I'll do is just click on collision volume. And this switch right here, what it does is analyzes the rest of the volumes that are present or visible in this case. So, you know, that's why the arms are visible in right now, the head, and, you know, even the color, so that when ZBrush simulates this, it actually takes into account those pieces. So yeah, so that's the only thing. And before I tweak anything else, I'm just going to click on Run Simulation so that you can see what happens. I'm going to stop it there. All right. So a couple of things, that we can tweak. This doesn't look great, and that is just because we haven't fine-tuned any of these things. So the reason that it is taking so long for the kind of like the garment to sort of conform to the body, and it's just like keeps going down and it's stretching and all of that, it is because of the firmness, like let's say the properties of the material that we're simulating. So the firmness is set to 2. We also have the collision with the floor, so that's why it's colliding with the floor. We also have the gravity value set to 10, which is pretty strong. Another thing that we can tweak is the simulation iteration. So this is the way that I see this one, the simulation iteration is kind of like the quality, the resolution. So you can crank that up and get a better quality. Again, don't go too crazy with that number. But ideally, this number should be higher so that when you simulate, ZBrush has enough time to catch up with the simulation. So let me show you what that means. So let's undo that. Let's turn off floor collision. And you know what? Maybe let's simulate it with less polygons just so that it's faster. And recalculate the volumes. Okay, so I'm going to set the firmness to 4. The simulation iteration to 250. And the gravity, I'm going to set that to 2, or maybe, yeah, let's try 2. So those are the things that I just changed based on what I mentioned before. Let's run the simulation again, see what that does. And you see that is a lot better, right? So it's closer to what I wanted to create. Right now, this is kind of like a poncho. It doesn't necessarily look the way that I wanted to, but it's better than what we had before, right? So let's undo that. Now that we have, let's just do a little snapshot there and undo that. So a couple of things. Now, this mesh, when it falls, is gonna collide, and we wanna enable collision with each other, or allowed self collision. So this is the self collision. I'm just gonna set it to 1 or 2 maybe. Let's set it to 1. Again, the self collision is so that the mesh can collide with itself. Let's see if that does anything before I move anything else. So just to test it out. So we should get like a similar result, but this time you see there's no intersection, which is great. That's what we wanted. So we're getting there. Let's go ahead and do another screenshot there. So I'm going to undo that. But now that I have simulated this, I realize maybe the quality of the material is too strong. So it's kind of like a really thick leather piece, or like a canvas, like really stiff canvas piece of fabric. So what I want to do is tweak that, and I can do that with the firmness. Now, one thing I should mention though is if you don't change the simulation iteration and you set the firmness to 4, so if you set the simulation to 100 as default, it's going to give you something different, like a lot more stretchy. Let me show you. It might not be as evident, but let's see. So I don't know if you can see the difference, but there's the quality of the, I mean, it's still the same. It still works, right? But the stretchiness of the fabric is different because of the strength of the gravity is kind of like pulling things faster than what ZBrush can, kind of like run the simulation. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically, just to keep things simple, crank this up to increase the quality, and I'm going to reduce the firmness to 3, and let's run the simulation. So now we should get like smaller wrinkles, something closer to what we need. There we go. Yeah, I think this is exactly what I wanted. So you can kind of like see the progression of the dynamics. So my recommendation when you are playing around with dynamics is just make sure that you set the basics, as in what's the collision volume, maybe the gravity, reduce that gravity, and yeah, and just run it. And then based on what you get, try to understand what is happening so that you can compensate in the slider. So if it is giving you like tiny little wrinkles, then it's because it is more like a, you know, the structure of the material is not as well put together. So it's kind of like a linen, or you know, like a thin cotton type of thing. So that's when you take the firmness and put it up and, you know, play around with those values. So I'm gonna clear that up. Oh, higher. And now that I have this, you can keep simulating. That's the great thing about ZBrush, right? Or the simulation in ZBrush. That now this is the new mesh. It doesn't mean that now ZBrush is gonna keep the original kind of like flat mesh and continue the simulation based on that original volume. So now this is the new volume. Like, you know, if I simulate, it's probably gonna stretch things a little bit, but let's try it. And it's just giving me all those artifacts because I increased the resolution quite a bit. Again, I just wanted to show you, not that I'm gonna do it. Actually, let's go back to 3, and I'm gonna delete higher. We don't need that many polygons. And the next thing I wanna do is tweak this a bit, and we can do that with the move brush, just the normal tools, just to adjust it. Or we can use something like the slide brush, slide cloth, or cloth slide, sorry, this one right here. This will maintain, you know, it's kind of like a simulation brush. So yeah, you can do that to pull it like that. I don't, in this particular instance where you have drapery, I don't find it as useful. It's really useful when you have, you know, wrinkles within, how can I put it? Like wrinkles within a, kind of like a pillow or a cushion or something that is wrinkly. But in this case, what we need to keep in mind when we edit this manually or when we sculpt on this are the tension points and the influence of the gravity. So in other words, you know, these, the neck and the shoulders, and maybe this part of the chest, those are going to be the obstacles that the brush, that the cloth is colliding with, and then you have the gravity, which is pulling everything down, right? And because we don't have any tension points or any, you know, any pinning or anything here at the bottom, what we end up is with these long drapery folds, and that's when you get this, you know, this type of like a curtain type of thing, right? So we need to keep that in mind. But if there were like some kind of you know, pinning or another point of tension, so this is one point of tension. If the guy, for instance, had like the arm up and the arm was here, this becomes another tension point or another obstacle, and then that's when we need to consider, okay, there's gonna be like a wrinkle or a fall from here to here, and then you start getting those type of wrinkles. Anyway, so we can use that. We can also use the cloth hook. So the cloth hook is kind of like the same thing. So I can use this to sort of like pull this down a bit more. And this one is really good to do compression falls. So if you have like a sleeve, right? Can maybe pretend that the guy has like the arms lifted up and then do a render from this angle. So that's pretty cool. But the rest I'm just gonna do it manually. That was my point. So I'm gonna use the move topological, and I'm just pressing the Alt key to pull these polygons along their normals. Maybe a tiny bit of smoothing to clean this up. Let's see the chat first. How do you decide when you simulate and when to sculpt clothing? Good question. I don't see it that way. Like, I don't see it as a separate process. It's a good question. I don't have the answer for it. I guess the closest thing that I can say is that I don't see them as separate processes. let's do a quick save, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'll tell you what I mean by that by explaining, hopefully, this with a real scenario, because it's a good question. So just think about it in this way, right? So if I have, let's just set this gravity like this. So this is a dynamic sphere, and it has only 8,000 polygons. So I can, very easily simulate that. I'm going to increase the firmness to 4, and I'm going to simulate this. Oops, let's do that. Floor collision, self-collide, let's remove that. So I can do this, right? Just simulate this, then go with the, let's go for the cloth hook, and then just pull this like so, right? Like, let's say that I'm simulating this thing, but the reason I said I don't see it like, okay, this is simulation process, then you have sculpting manually, is in ZBrush you can do those things at the same time, right? So if I go ahead and redynamesh, so I can just redynamesh this, and it's just basically a new dynamesh sphere, and I can keep pulling things, redynameshing. So it's just every time that I press Control, click, and drag, I'm redynameshing to sculpt. So I can just literally manually edit this or sculpt it. Maybe use the inflate brush, use the damp standard brush, right? Simulate that. Stop the simulation, redynamesh. It's all part of the same thing. So that's what I like about doing simulations in ZBrush. You can just have this bit, and then go back and forth between and then if I like this, I just go ahead and do a series measure and continue editing. But to answer the question a little bit more like a straightforward answer, I would simulate the base meshes. That's the distinction that I would make. I would go for base meshes first. That's the simulation, and then move to this, which is what I'm doing now, which is more manual adjustments, if that makes sense. Hopefully. Cool. So is using dynamics make using sphere to sculpt clothing around the body not relevant anymore? Sorry, I'm not entirely sure what that means. You mean like using a sphere to sculpt clothing? No, sorry, I'm not sure. If it is just like manual sculpting, I think I covered that in the previous example. Cool. All right. Reason I ask is recently I completed a drapery course, your drapery course, and that version didn't have dynamics, but then I can see some parts definitely make. Okay. Okay, now I know what you mean. Yeah, so in the course that I have online, it's a mini course, like an intensive mini course that is actually in with the discount of that, with this discount that you can see here on the screen, that gives you 25% on that one as well, 25% off in that store. Yeah, I covered the manual process because I personally think it's much better, much more important to understand the kind of like the theory and the basics and do it yourself manually than relying on the simulation. Because if you understand the basics, and basically that's what I cover in that course, and the manual process, when you simulate something, in theory it should be good, right? Like the simulation should give you something pretty accurate. But if you don't have the knowledge, or if you don't have the basics, or like the fundamentals of how clothes interact and all of that, the physics of it, then you might not be able to spot if there is like some issues with the simulation. But just to keep the answer short again, in ZBrush I would concentrate on simulating the basis of the clothing, and then it's still manually edited, which is what I would do in this case, right? Okay, so I think I have pretty much everything I need. I'm gonna go ahead and use the move topological just to adjust this a bit more with a larger brush, so kind of like closing the gaps a bit. Again, you'll have to be careful about how much you decide to edit this, because we need to maintain that sort of straight lines towards the bottom, unless there's like another collision object in there. All right, so another cool thing with ZBrush though is that now you can use, well, not now, but for ages now, you can use dynamic subdivision. I'm gonna leave the dynamic subdivision to 1, so one more level of subdivision to make it a bit smoother. And let's go ahead and also add thickness, so dynamic thickness. So I'm just gonna add a bit of thickness to this guy, like that, and we have about 20 minutes left, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one. One cool thing though is right now the edges are pretty sharp, as you can see. So I can click on pause subdivision so that it happens after you subdivide. Yeah, and you can just tweak the smoothness, but I think this will give you a pretty decent result. Alrighty, I'll have a look at the chat in just a second. But yes, I think this is working fine. I'm gonna use this standard brush just to fine tune these, you know, these folds. And again, I'm not necessarily placing these randomly. I'm thinking about where are the tension points, where, you know, for example, I wouldn't have a wrinkle there, right? Because unless, you know, there's a compression fall or something, because in reality all there is there is just an obstacle, and then the gravity is pulling it down, so it's just gonna be flat almost. All right. Another thing that we might be able to add, no, I think that's cool. Let's try to finish what what I mentioned earlier. So I'm gonna append a cube. I'm gonna make it a Q cube, and that cube now is there. I'm gonna make it smaller. Let's put it here. So it's just a cube that is sitting inside the character, and this is something that I use, you know, 99% of the time when I'm using insert brushes. So I'll use an insert brush to do the crown thingy that I mentioned. So I'm gonna use the same tool, the same asset I created for the necklace, but instead of using the nano mesh, I'm just gonna use the insert brush. So before I go into that, again, have like 20 minutes to build that crown. Let's see. If you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat now that I'm having a look. Come from a drawing background, and manual process gives me better artistic control, and simulation will give me speed and realism. Yep, exactly. Awesome. Can dynamics be used for liquids or other visual effects like VFX like substance? Yeah, you can fashion you can fashion a mesh into looking more like liquid. For example, if you have a bunch of let me just think about an example. If you have like, I did this when I was beta testing the dynamics in ZBrush. I did like a leaf that that I turned into a nanomesh, and then that leaf, I simulated that leaf with liquid, and it just flows. Can I show? I can show you how to do that dynamic thing if we have time at the end. Can you show how would you do a chainmail? Oh, I've done this like maybe 5 different times in 5 different episodes. So go back and look for this guy. Sorry, I don't have the number. Like I don't remember which episode it was that we did that. But let's see. I think it's in my ArtStation somewhere. Yeah. So look for this guy. This is a guy that that I started in the streams. So I did that chainmail. I explained how to build that in the live stream. So just look through the catalog or the archive of my episodes and look for the shape of this, the head of this guy, and that one has the, I covered the chainmail thing. All right, let's do the crown. So I'm gonna click and drag to build, to set that, to set kind of like the first thing, and I'm gonna use the movable, sorry, the gizmo, just place this. So yeah, the idea is to maintain kind of like that, create kind of like a visual connection between these and the necklace that I did. So a very simple trick is just to use the same assets. So that's why I'm using this spiky thing to build that. But still not 100% sure of what these would look like, so just taking my time to build something interesting. There might be some organic bits that I can add. We'll see. Sometimes I do this, by the way. So I like to be very careful about how I place things. But when I'm designing, if I don't have like a reference, I would very often just go ahead and do this type of thing. I like very quickly just to see, okay, maybe I can add smaller bits and pieces in this area, and then just go back like and do it, properly. So that's another part of the process that I enjoy, just testing things out. Maybe I'll cover the eyes. Something very impractical but different. Yeah. So if you have any other questions about something else, something that I can answer while I do this, I'll be happy to answer that. Because yeah, this is a very repetitive process. It's kind of fun, but it's the same thing. It's just click and dragging. When you use a IMM brush, obviously ZBrush just build or creates a mask for the rest, so you can use the gizmo to tweak it. I think in terms of the design, this is gonna be pretty much it. And in terms of the like, as I do this as well, I'm also thinking about the type of materials. So I don't know, maybe some kind of like glass or crystal. I'm just thinking about something very like the story that I have in my head basically is like this guy is some kind of like royal, like a prince, like I said, like an alien prince, and these bits of jewelry, they're kind of like situate this character in like that high society of whatever society this guy comes from, but I can kind of like justify these design choices that I'm making based on that tiny story. So, for example, these spikes that I'm making, and I'm also thinking about the fact that they could be kind of like a gemstone or like some kind of crystal. So ultimately, it would be pretty dangerous. As in, you wouldn't put like glass close to your eyes, like spiky glass and things around your head, or next to your chest. So the idea is that this guy wears all of these things, kind of like as a like daring thing, just so like he dares the danger or whatever. But more than that is so that it also gives you a tiny hint as to how the character moves or how the character behaves, like the mannerisms. So because everything is very dangerous, as in his jewelry, and it's very exuberant, and it could look very slick and fashionable, but the character wouldn't have like sudden movement, so he will just move very gracefully, I suppose, with those things. So I don't know, if you're interested in what is running through my head as I do this, that's kind of like what my mind goes as I design this. Right, so I'm gonna clear the mask just to judge where we are with this guy. It's kind of like a Caesar from the future. Cool. We have about 10 minutes, so I can show you how to do the liquid with dynamics. I'm gonna just wrap it up pretty soon anyway, but I do want to finish a bit of the detailing. Oh, by the way, something I didn't mention. So a few things. For those of you who you weren't here when I mentioned it, this is my episode number 101, so 101, and that code that I have here on the bottom right of the screen, so just here below my mouse, that code gives you 25% on the store. Like all the brushes, everything is 25% for the next 10 minutes. So I just made it available for the 2 hours of the stream. So it's just for people that participate and attend on the stream. So if you're interested, go ahead and grab anything that you want with 25% discount before the end of the stream. Once the stream is finished, the code will expire. And the other thing is, if you go to the 3D Concept Artist website, there's a ribbon at the bottom of the home screen, which is the Art Door Challenge. So this is an art challenge that I'm running at the moment, but the deadline is on the 28th of February, so the end of this month. This one. 28th of February is the deadline. So if you haven't started, or if you didn't know about it and you still want to join, I think this is still a pretty good time to join, because you have like 2 more weeks, and the first place, second place, and third place, they have like fantastic prizes. So one space mouse, wireless, similar to this thing. I don't know if you can see that. Similar to this thing. It's like the space mouse, but it's just the little thing without the buttons. Still, it's like probably the the coolest thing about the mouse. A Wacom Cintiq 16 inches, character creator license 3, an invite to Foundation for NFTs. So it has a lot of different cool stuff. And there's some amazing work that has been shared already. And I'm running all of this in Discord. So all you have to do is just go here. I'll put a link into the chat if you want to participate in the challenge. Like I said, this is a pretty cool way of get started. Just click on Discord, and if you already have Discord or whatever, it will just open up the app and you can just join the challenge. And this is also the link to join my personal Discord server, and it's just an awesome community where we discuss art and we do like live sessions and all of that. Now the reason I'm mentioning this right now as well is because today I have a live session where I'm gonna give feedback to the people that are participating. So I'm not a judge. I'm just running it. I'm just running the challenge. So I'm not a judge. So my role has been kind of like helping people and providing feedback. So tonight at 6 p.m. my time, there's gonna be a live session where you can ask questions specifically about the challenge and all of that. So if you want to participate, or if you're already participating and you haven't checked Discord, just make sure that you check the events. There's an event scheduled for today or tonight where I'm gonna be live, providing feedback and all of that. Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm just gonna do a couple more things here just to wrap it up. This glass thingy. And then I can show you guys the liquid thing with dynamics. Just want to tweak a couple things. So yeah, just I want to add a bit of curvature to some of these bits and pieces. Kind of like with the same idea of what I did with the nanomesh and varying things a tiny bit, so that it's not everything the same. And because I'm using the move topological, I can tweak each individual piece individually, so that so the other ones are not affected. So I usually use this processor, this tool, to deal with intersecting meshes, just like I'm doing right now. But I'm not gonna worry too much about that. Okay, so let's go into solo mode. I want to hide or delete that cube that I originally created so that I could insert those meshes. And yeah, so that's pretty much everything. I think this guy's looking all right. The original intention, I'm not entirely sure about this bit, to be honest. So what I'll do is I'm gonna just gonna hide that. Auto group it. Mask everything. And then just change this a bit. I think it's the angle that I'm not happy with. Yeah, I think that's better. Cool. I want to try something. Yeah. I'm gonna do some kind of like helmet thing just with that. All right. I think this is plenty. I mean, you know, I just like as I do this, I come up with ideas. So I was thinking of maybe doing something like this. To kind of like break that line a bit more, but let's keep it simple. That's it. All right, so this is the guy that we've been working for the couple of past two streams. I might just like, you know, add some details later on and do a quick render for this. But I think, you know, I think it works as a concept. I did have some polypaint from last time, so this is the polypaint that I have. So I might just go with some like golden beads and some crystal type of thing, and maybe, you know, like a dark clothing, something like that. And this could be, oh, by the way, something that I didn't mention, these things are still nanomesh. So if you want to actually edit them as meshes, so this is still nanomesh, you just need to go to inventory, click on one to mesh, and I'm just going to hide that and split hidden so that I have the base there, and I'm going to do the same thing in here. So nanomesh, one to mesh, split hidden, and let's save this one in here. All right. All right. This is just to give you a rough idea of what I, you know, how I would split the materials and that sort of thing. But yeah, other than that, this is the final creature. Hope you guys found something useful or interesting from the process that I shared with you. Now, just before, because yeah, we ran out of time, but I guess let's do a quick save and I can show you very quickly the dynamics with fluids, which is pretty cool. No worries. Do you have cloth brushes for sale? There's some cloth brushes with the course, with the mini course, the cloth and drapery course that's in there. But you know, that's not the focus of the course. It's just like extra resources, almost like bonus stuff, which yeah, they're in there. But the new ones I haven't released them yet, like the cloth brushes. Um, any good link? Anyone? Okay. So just to show you that last bit, like that question you guys asked before. So I'm gonna select a plane 3D, make it a polymesh 3D. Right. I guess we can use the thing that we created. So I'm just gonna click on that to build this, and let's go nanomesh. It's too many palettes open at the moment. Nanomesh, one to mesh. Oh no, that's gonna be too high. All right, let's do let's just duplicate that. And I want to cut it up the same way that I've showed you before. So I'm going to create like a leaf shape. And with a polygroup, delete hidden, polish by groups, remesh this. All right, something like this. We can even take something like the cloth hook, just move it around so that we can deform it with dynamics. All right, so that's just the leaf. I'm gonna go ahead and click and make it a, an insert mesh. And then I'm gonna take that insert mesh and make it a nano mesh. Then go back in here and click and drag, right click, maybe reconstruct this so it's, not as many polygons. So now we have these leaves. Let's make it one to mesh, delete hidden. So now we have all these leaves. Let's rotate that, put it up. And just for the sake of demonstration, let's go ahead and append sphere. Smaller, turn on the floor. So right, so I have this thing. Let's do auto groups as well. So I have a bunch of groups of these leaves. And what I can do is in the deformation palette, I can enable collision volume for this, right? And it happens, like if I click on simulate, it just, let's undo that. I'm gonna set the firmness to 6, but increase the gravity. So yeah, that's basically what it happens when you do this with separate meshes. It just works the same way as the clothing. I just think, see if I can simplify this a bit more. No. Just so that it's not as slow. All right, that's better. Cool. So let's do the same thing, just recalculate. And this time I'm just gonna enable liquify. So this is the switch that makes things, feel more liquidy. So I'm gonna click on that and Dynamish. So you see, that's kind of like the liquid. So I'm just gonna set direction so it happens that way. It might be doing that just because of the placement of it. Yeah, but yeah, it's more liquid. It's like if you take something like the move cloth brush and you move it around, in this case it's not doing anything. Just to split it apart. I guess, I use this for one of the characters that I did, but you can use this kind of like gravity tool. Sorry, the liquify tool with gravity to generate this type of cool things. So it just moves like in a, I think it's following kind of like a noise pattern or something like that. Anyway, you can just play around with that. Just thought I should mention it before wrapping up today's session. But yeah, let's go ahead and do a quick render for this. And we call it a day. Yep, that's it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, all right, I'll give you I'll give 5 more minutes if you haven't made up your mind before the code expires. Again, it was just for this live stream. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in and the support, guys, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. We're gonna start with a new project. All right, have a good